All right, let's dive right in. Welcome to today's explainer. People so often treat UI and UX like it's just a final coat of paint, right? Like you build the house and then you just sort of slap some color on at the end to make it look pretty. But when we actually dive into Bay One's strategic UI UX philosophy, it becomes super clear why that approach totally misses the mark. Intentional design isn't just decoration, it's a fundamental strategic pillar of your business's success. If you've ever wondered why some digital products feel effortlessly magical to use, while others just cause endless hair-pulling friction, well, you're definitely in the right place. Okay, here's a quick look at our roadmap today. 1, the bottom line of design. 2, unearthing deep user truths. 3, designing for human emotion. 4, architecting intuitive digital spaces. And 5, validating and measuring success. We're going to treat this journey kind of like an iceberg model. We'll start right at the surface with the financial impact, then we're going to dive way deep into the psychology and research, and finally surface back up to look at real-world validation.
So, Section 1, the bottom line of design. The true financial impact of UI and UX. Let's immediately challenge that whole idea that design is just about aesthetics.
400%. Just let that number sink in for a second. According to Forrester research, that is how much a strategic UX design can actually boost your conversion rates. 400%. We're not talking about some tiny single-digit bump in sales because somebody tweaked a color palette. Sure, a polished interface is great, but Bayon really emphasizes that the intentionality behind the design, the deep, empathetic rationale driving literally every single decision, is what actually transforms a standard interaction into a massive growth engine. Moving right along to Section 2, Unearthing Deep User Truths. Going beyond surface-level assumptions, let's go below the surface of those huge ROI numbers and look at the meticulous research you actually need to pull them off. Bay One argues that if you want transformative design, you absolutely have to move past basic demographic personas. Instead of just looking at basic demographics, age, location, that kind of thing, we really need what they call data-rich profiles. These map actual psychographics and emotional states to highly specific interaction points. So we need to know what exactly causes a user anxiety, what sparks their curiosity, what's motivating their choices beyond what they might just casually check off on a survey. And to build those data-rich profiles, you've got to get out of the sterile conference room. You need ethnographic research methods. Because let's be honest, sometimes what a user tells you in a formal focus group is completely different from what they actually do when they're alone at their computer. By using contextual inquiry and fly-on-the-wall observation, researchers can basically just watch users interact with software in their own natural environments. And doing this reveals all those unarticulated needs and hidden usability pain points that you would literally never uncover in a standard Q&A. There's this really fascinating, highly actionable tip from the source material on how to facilitate these conversations. When you're talking to a user, don't just show them the current software and ask, "So, what do you hate about this?" Instead, actually ask them to physically draw out their ideal solution before you even bring up existing platforms. It completely bypasses all their preconceived biases, and it unlocks this incredibly honest, creative feedback. It's such a game changer. All right, let's shift over to Section 3, Designing for Human Emotion, the new frontier in digital experiences. This is where we transition from just observing how users act to measuring how they actually feel. So there's a key concept in Bain 1's methodology called the frustration threshold. Now, believe it or not, a little bit of mild stress is actually totally acceptable if the user is doing a complex task, like, say, filing taxes or configuring a secure server. But there is a very specific, measurable tipping point where that acceptable stress turns into actual toxic frustration. Identifying that exact threshold is absolutely critical. Why? Because it acts as a blaring alarm bell that your UI needs an immediate reassessment. But how do you actually measure a feeling, right? Well, Bay One uses some pretty specialized scientific methods during usability sessions to figure this out. They aren't just holding a stopwatch to see how fast someone clicks a button. They're utilizing things like the facial action coding system, or FACS, to track micro-expressions. They're intensely observing the nonverbal cues, the sighs, the hesitations, or even those little moments of spontaneous delight. Sometimes they even bring in quantitative facial expression analysis software to gather incredibly nuanced data about the user's emotional arc. It's a phenomenally powerful way to discover friction that the user isn't even consciously aware of. Now, if you're sitting there wondering, why should a business invest so much time tracking size and micro-expressions? This quote from the Harvard Business Review hits the nail on the head. It says, an emotionally connected customer is more than twice as valuable as someone who is just highly satisfied. When your design creates a genuinely positive emotional response, when it makes the user feel understood and accomplished and relieved, you aren't just getting a casual user, you're transforming them into a fervent, highly valuable brand advocate. Which brings us to Section 4. Architecting intuitive digital spaces, translating emotion into structural design. So how do we take all of these deep psychological insights and actually bake them into a digital blueprint? Well, it all starts with information architecture, or IA. Think of this kind of like pouring the concrete foundation and framing the walls of a house, way before you even think about picking out the living room curtains. It's the invisible backbone. By mapping out the logic, the content hierarchy, and the whole user journey first, we make sure that the digital space perfectly aligns with the user's natural mental models. And this architecture comes to life through a really rigorous iterative cycle. You don't just jump straight into writing code. That's a recipe for disaster. First, you validate the logic with low-fidelity wireframes. Then, you test the emotional resonance using high-fidelity prototypes. This means functionality is completely vetted without spending a single dime on expensive front-end development. And only after all that rigorous vetting do we finally build the live user interface. Now, a massive part of this architectural phase has to be accessibility. Bay 1 heavily emphasizes that WCAG guidelines, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, have to be foundational. This is absolutely not just some box you check at the very end to avoid a compliance lawsuit. From day one, the design has to embed elements like sufficient color contrast, logical keyboard navigation, area landmarks, and really clear form labels. Designing inclusively ensures ethical, universal access for everyone, which, by the way, inherently broadens your entire market reach. Finally, let's look at Section 5, validating and measuring success, proving the impact of intentional design. We're surfacing back to the top of our iceberg here to prove how this entire human-centered philosophy actually translates into hard, measurable business data. Because, crucially, successful design is never just based on gut feelings. It is grounded in rigorous, ongoing usability testing and performance optimization. Once a product is out there, we have to track very specific key performance indicators. Are the task completion rates going up? Are error rates dropping? Are we seeing higher conversion rates and better net promoter scores? Ultimately, it's the data that holds the design accountable. Let's look at a real-world application of this from the source material. There's this fascinating case study of a mid-sized e-commerce client. Now, they had highly competitive pricing, but they were suffering from just terrible cart abandonment rates. People were leaving right at the end. Through journey mapping and emotional testing, Bay 1 figured out the root cause. And guess what? It wasn't the price. It was anxiety. A cluttered checkout interface and really unclear shipping details were actually triggering deep distrust and frustration right at the finish line. So what happened when they redesigned it? By streamlining that checkout flow, simplifying the form fields, and resolving all that emotional anxiety around shipping, they achieved a massive 20% reduction in cart abandonment. 20%! And not only that, they saw a 15% overall increase in completed transactions the very next quarter. That right there is the pure financial power of empathetic design. All right, let's quickly wrap up this explainer with our core takeaways. Number 1, empathy and emotion drive connection. Understanding how your user feels is honestly just as vital as tracking what they click. Number 2, data informs, but creativity innovates. The most exceptional products out there are born when hard, rigorous research actually meets fresh, imaginative design thinking. And lastly, collaboration is key. True partnership between the stakeholders, the designers, and the developers is really the only way to build these robust digital platforms. I want to leave you with this final thought today. Think about the platforms, the apps, or the websites that your business puts out into the world. Take a hard look and ask yourself honestly, are your digital interactions pushing your users over that frustration threshold, or are they carefully architected to spark genuine delight and build fervent advocacy? Because the architecture of emotion is always there, whether you intentionally designed for it or not. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this empowers you to look at your digital spaces in a whole new, deeply human way.
Thanks for watching. We appreciate you. Check out the next video on this topic, or subscribe to our channel to keep up with our latest explainer videos, live webinars, and other insights into technology solutions.